Mount Kisco. Susan, you were, and oh, it's good. It's our crew from last night. Hi, Mary. I will know you. I'm pretty good at this stuff eventually. It just takes me a couple of repeats and I definitely will know you.
We're neighbors.
Oh, I love that. Where are you?
We're both in Kenosha.
Oh, your neighbor's in Kenosha. I thought you
Yeah.
were my neighbor and I was super.
No.
I'm still excited, but I was like, wait, let's go walk dogs. No. Okay. Awesome. Norfolk, Virginia. Yes, there's a recording. Two ways you can access the recording, Wendy. It's there's a YouTube version if you are Zoom averse. We're having Zoom issues because I posted the Zoom last night and somebody reported an issue with it. And we have just had, I think the latest version of Zoom is super buggy. And I have been on the phone with Zoom many times in the past few days. So I also put it on YouTube. It's an unlisted URL, so you can't search it on YouTube, but it's in the Facebook group. And I will email it around with the link to this session in a bit. Minnesota, I love this. Yay. Awesome. New Milford, Connecticut, not too far. Iowa. Where's Jane? There she is. I think Jane was on last night. That's such an official name. It's like a TV name, Jane McTavish, right? It's like an anchor.
Why, thank you.
I'm ready for your show on PBS, Jane McTavish. It's a very official name. Awesome. Thank you for indulging my goofiness as we get going up. We've got a couple more. Somebody who doesn't have a name. What is this strange name? We're going to try it. All right. Welcome, everybody. My name's Tanya Singer. You can see a little red dress behind me. I did not knit that one. I am knitting, this is my little red dress. And for those of you who joined last night, I'm in my happy place right now is stockinette. And so I am knitting the little red dress skirt without butterflies. And I'm thinking I might embroider some on my knitting when I'm done. It is my privilege today to turn you over to a dear friend and major source of inspiration in my life who has had her hands, I think, in every single one of my knitting projects in one way or another, from, short rows to, crazy cast-ons and everything in between, color work, floats, all that stuff. My knitting guru, Melissa Shinsato. And I met Melissa. My son had brain surgery when he was in 8th grade, and thank God he's fine. And I had to learn to crochet so that I could finish this blanket I had started for him. And I felt so guilty about him going into surgery and me not having this blanket done for him. And I felt determined to finish it. And I met Melissa and was like, okay, I'm adopting you you're in my life, where like, I just was like, she's awesome and she knows how to do everything. So I will turn it over to Melissa and she will give you a more formal introduction and then take it away. So I'm going to mute myself and I'm in the chat if you guys have any issues or questions.
Hi, everyone. I'm Melissa Shinsato, and I'm thrilled to be here. I'm thrilled to be a part of this project. And I have been knitting since I was 12. My grandmother taught me, and she taught me needlepoint and embroidery. No cooking. She wasn't that good of a cook, but she was an amazing knitter. And she taught me to knit the continental way. So I hold my yarn in my left hand. And from there, I went to the Fashion Institute of Technology in New York City. I worked at Liz Claiborne and Ralph Lauren. And when I had my first child, I just became obsessed with knitting again. I put down all my needlework and I just knit and knit and knit, and I haven't stopped. So today I'm going to not so much teach you how to do things. I'm not going to teach the long tail cast on, but I'm going to teach some tips and tricks. So the first one is casting on the long tail cast on when you have hundreds of stitches. So what I have right now is I have 2 balls of yarn, and I have a strand from both of them. So I'm going to leave a tail and do a loose knot. So you can see I'm not pulling it tight at all. I place it over my needle and I'm going to hold this pretty securely. Place a marker. And now I'm just going to start my long tail cast on. And I have an infinite amount of tail because I'm going from both balls. And one of the other things I do when I'm casting on with long tail is I put a finger or a thumb here so that when I tighten up my next stitch, my thumb is right there and it gives you a little bit of space. And then I move my thumb and I have a little bit of space. So there's nothing worse than a tight cast on. If you're making a hat or socks, you go to put it on and the cast on is so tight, you can't, get it over your head. So I am seeing that this is upside down. So just give me a minute and I'm gonna fix this. So I do apologize. Okay, so are we still upside down? We're still upside down. I don't know why this is happening.
While you do that, has anyone done that way of casting on with 2 balls of yarn? Carol has. I can't believe I didn't know that. I can't believe you've known me all these years and you've never shown me that trick. That is
Well,
awesome.
I was trying to explain it to you the other day and I didn't have something to show you and you're like, oh, I had 2 balls. I don't get it.
See it. I have to see it.
So here's my thumb and I tighten it up to my thumb. So I have that little bit of space. So now that I have cast on 144 stitches, I'm going to go back here and I'm ready to start knitting. The first thing I do is I slip this off and I put my marker right there to remind me to do that. So I take my marker off. This is going to hang down just as if it was a tail and I'll unknot it and bury it later. Another thing that I did when I was casting on is every 20 stitches, I put a marker. So if the dog that you may have heard barking in the background interrupts me, I put everything down, I come back and I don't have to start counting from 0. It's 20, 40, 60, 80. And another tip is, you know how the instructions always say, be careful not to twist your knitting? I lay my knitting on the table and I make sure that everything is positioned properly. And then I may hold my breath while I pick it up. See, I have a twist right here. So I'm just putting everything so that it's all on the outside. I pick it up and I start knitting. So those are my tricks for long tail cast on. Any questions? That was pretty simple, right? So now I am going to show you how to do cables without a cable needle. And I changed to a darker yarn, much bigger gauge because it was hard to see. So the first thing I'm going to do is create the cable as it's written in the pattern with a cable needle, because I want to be able to see how this is going to look. So it's slip your first stitch onto a cable needle, hold to the back, knit the next stitch off the left needle, and knit the stitch off your cable needle. So that is the first half of the butterfly. The second half is to slip the first stitch onto your cable needle, hold to the front, knit the first stitch and knit the second stitch. And so you can see what the cable is going to look like. So now there are two different ways to do this. The first one is to take your 2 stitches off and reposition them on the needle. So I wedge my needle into the second stitch because that's going to come to the front. I squeeze everything very tightly because you don't want anything to unravel. And I place that second stitch on my left needle, and there's the first one. So everything is repositioned so that I can just knit them straight off the left needle. And there we have the first side. And now I go to the back of the second. Again, squeeze, put it to the front, or put it back on the left needle and put this one on the left needle. And again, because they're in the correct order, I can just knit them straight off the needle. So now the second way, it's a little more fiddly, but I find anything better than fiddling with a cable needle, quite frankly. So I know that this side of the cable, this has to go to the front. The second stitch has to go to the front. So that's the first one I'm going to knit. I'm going to put my needle in, knit it, come back out. And now I'm going to knit the first stitch on the needle and take them off. And as you can see, that twisted the second stitch into the front. So now, this is where it gets a little fiddly. To knit this second one first, I have to go in between the 2 stitches, come around and go into that second stitch knitwise. Knit it. And now I knit the second stitch. So we have the first one and the second one. So those are the 2 ways that you can cable without a cable needle.
Who has questions? That was big. That was
Right?
a lot. All right, guys, you can unmute or you can put a note in the chat because if you want to see one or both methods.
Could you do it again?
Sure.
Second one again?
The second one, it is very fiddly. But
Right.
like I said, I really am not friends with a cable needle. So this side, I want the second stitch to be in the front. So that's going to be the first one I knit. Okay, so there's the first one. I went in as if to knit. There's no, having to go in the wrong way. And I hold it over here. And now I'm able to go into that first stitch. And that it's all proper. It's all twisted properly. So then to do a left leaning cable, I stick my needle between the 2. Whoops, here we go. Okay, I come around and I get my needle in there and knit. I bring it forward. And now I'm going to knit into the second one.
I'm ending up with my yarn in between the 2 stitches.
Pardon?
I'm ending up with the yarn between the 2 stitches after I
Okay.
do the second stitch with the backwards one. Sorry,
Okay,
I usually just drop it off and pick it up.
That's what I just did. Okay, so here's the first one. All right, so here's that first stitch. Okay.
Yep.
And now I go and do the second stitch and take them both off. Oh, something went wrong there.
Into the second.
Here's the first one. Here's the second one. Okay.
Is there any way
And-
that you can do it by throwing?
Oh, yes, definitely. Well, I'll just keep knitting. Okay, so here's the first one. Around. I bring it out. And here's the second one. So now this would be so much easier with a professional film crew. You could see it so much better. Okay, so here's the first one. And then I go into the second one. And there we go. And I think it's going to be much clearer when you knit back.
I have a little cheat to make that second one a little easier and less fiddly, but
Oh, tell me,
I'd
tell
love
me,
to see if you mind the way it looks.
tell me.
I just knit in the back of the loop, so I don't have to bring the needle all the way to the front. And in a cute little twist like this, you can't even tell that that second one is through the back of the loop. You know what I'm saying?
I do, I do.
So see,
And-
try it and see if you think it looks okay,
Okay.
but it's just simpler because you don't have to go in the front then.
Okay,
So
so
yeah,
what
you
you're doing
back of the
is
loop.
going like this.
Yeah, and you just do it that way. And then you knit the one that's first on the needle after that. And then you don't have to do that hard maneuver. And I can't tell that it's
Okay, so here's your first one. You have that sticking out, and then you come around to the front. I like that so much
I mean,
better.
I don't think you can tell, and it's just an easier maneuver for me.
Absolutely. And you know what? I thought at first when you mentioned that it would be twisted, but they're not at all.
They might be, but I can't tell.
I don't think they are. And besides that, if it does bother you, you can untwist it when you go back. You know,
Yeah,
when you go
just
around
the
the second
one-
time.
The second stitch is through the back of the loop. The other one I do regular, just
Okay.
so I don't have to do that awkward maneuver.
And it is super awkward.
It works.
Okay, so the first one, you just knit as you normally would. Sorry, I'm supposed to be throwing. Okay, and you have that second stitch in the front. And then through the back loop, you come out like this, and then you swing around. Ooh, we like that. And I do think that when you go back and purl it all, it will look just fine. And you know, if you don't love cables, the skirt will look just as lovely without the little butterflies.
They're
So you're a compulsive counter. Somebody said that. I really understand that. And the other thing I do when I'm doing a cast on and I'm putting markers in, before I put the marker in for the 20th stitch, I go back and I double check my count, you know, because I just don't want to somehow make a mistake casting on and have to deal with that after 144 stitches.
I cast on 20 stitches. I count 20 stitches. I put a marker. I go back and I count 20 stitches. And then I go back and count 20 stitches again. And then I go on to the next 20, which I count while I knit on, put the marker and go back and count it.
I totally get that.
Yep.
I have a question. I've played with that with casting on that way, but when I get ready to begin knitting, I've got 2 threads and I'm just not comfortable with how to narrow it down to 1 again.
Oh, okay. So yes, you got to the end and there are 2. I drop one, and in doing this just now, I drop the one that's in the back and I cut it. Okay. So now I just go on and start knitting with the first one. And that's it. I never run out of tail. Does that answer your question?
Awesome. Yes, thank you.
Okay, good.
Thank you.
I use the marker. Oh, good. Oh, for a large project, it's a godsend to have this 20 thing. Especially if you have children or pets or a phone or, anything. Any other questions?
I have a question. Why can our family not tell when we're counting? Why, when I'm counting, that's when they talk more. And it's like, do you see the counting face? Like I'm sitting here counting.
And even if I start counting out loud, I don't know. I totally understand that. So how far is everybody? Have you cast on? Have you started knitting?
I just cast on to see what it would look like. I got about the first 6 rows.
Oh, good, good.
But to
If you use,
yeah.
oh, I see what you're saying. We put, somebody said, if you use the continuous garter stitch method with the 2 strands, you can keep working on both strands. That is a trick so that you don't have a jog in your garter stitch. And we
Oh.
put a link to a video that explains that in one of our emails.
I'll post it on the Facebook. I'll resend those links now that we're in cast on mode.
Yes.
It was in the email that came out on Monday.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Oh, did you knit your sweater? Carol, did you knit that?
I did.
We need to see.
Sarah Solomon Cobalt sweater. I actually took her class a couple of years ago in Vogue.
It's
actually
lovely.
It's knit in 4 pieces and sewn together. So it's like my favorite sweater because it fits perfectly.
I looked at where everybody lives and everybody is really cold right now. And that sweater just looks so nice.
Nice. It was actually after 30 years of knitting, it was my first adult sweater and mohair and everything. So I'm very fond of it. So.
So this is not a knitting question, but it's how you choose what size to make for a baby. And I'm knitting for a baby who will be born in early June. So I'm looking for your counsel on which would be the most practical size to knit for said baby. And yeah.
Okay, well, that's a great question because I actually have received a lot of questions about sizing. This dress is knit pretty generously. The chest measurement for each size is listed at the beginning of the pattern. And, babies are so strange. It's hard to tell what size they're going to be at any given point, but I would knit the 6-month size because by the time it gets to be cold enough to wear a wool dress, she's going to be 6 or 8 months anyway. Does that answer your question? Oh, you're muted.
Sorry. Yeah. I was disinclined. The 6-month was the one that I just immediately said, oh, no, that would be too small. She wouldn't get any use out of it. But so I'm very interested in this answer because I would, it would be kind of sweet to have a first dress for a baby who's coming in June.
It would be perfect for the holidays.
Yeah.
Like, oh, that would be awesome.
Yeah. And that would fit her through the winter and yeah.
Mhm. And
early
every
spring.
single first baby picture that will be taken, hundreds of.
Yeah. I do know that it's a girl. That's the one thing that I do know.
6-month one, do you remember? Do you
I
remember?
don't, I'm not sure who knit that.
This is George's.
Oh, yeah, I think that's 12 or 18 months.
Okay. I was gonna say, it's big.
Yeah.
Mhm.
I mean, it's generous. It's not, there's not this is not a negative ease.
No.
Okay.
That one looks like a toddler dress to me.
Yeah.
I keep thinking that.
Mhm. So somebody said you collect markers. I have to tell you, it took me a really long time today just to find these markers that match in the size, in the shape, let alone the size, because I have so many markers and they're all over the place. So I definitely get that. Any other questions or comments?
I have one pattern question, Melissa.
Yes.
When it says knit until work measures 8 inches after you've done the little skirt, is that 8 inches from cast on, or is that 8 inches from after the garter?
From the cast on edge.
Okay, thank you.
Uh-huh. Tanya, I'm going to throw it back to you.
Melissa, did you knit your sweater?
I did. This is a take on ranunculus.
I would have guessed,
Um,
I was guessing love note, but I couldn't see the front very well, so.
I love the ranunculus.
It's funny you
Yeah.
would say that because at first I was going to do the love note, but then I looked in Ravelry. And when I look in Ravelry and everybody else's projects, one of the things I try and find is somebody who has a body shape the same that I do. And I didn't think it looked very nice on the same body shape. So I went with ranunculus.
Melissa, there's no picture of you all of a sudden.
I see her.
Do you? I just have a blank. Hang on. Oh,
Just
there.
so we're,
Okay, I was still on your demo screen. That's why. Sorry.
That's okay.
I did
This-
both the ranunculus and the love notes, and I love the ranunculus, but I knit it in a super wash. I washed it the same way I wash all my cash. I blocked it, wore it 3 times. I knit it right at the beginning of the pandemic. And then I washed it in my washer with no spin,
Uh-huh.
and it shrunk. I got the money back from the yarn company. Like, I ended up pulling and pulling and pulling and giving it to my daughter as skinny as can be. But it's like now it's now cropped, but I loved it. And
That's really weird that a superwash would do that.
yeah, I'm like, look, I didn't spin it. I like knit. I literally wash like all my even store-bought cashmere sweaters in delicate with wool wash in the washer without a spin. And I was so upset, but I do love the sweater that might make another one.
Looks like we have questions about fiber, what
Hmm.
yarn everybody's using. I will say I started, this is a Lang at the top, and it's, I didn't love it. And then we found out, I mentioned last night about Leading Men Fiber Arts from a sample knitter. So I moved to that, and you can tell from, this is a Jill Draper. I love tonal yarn. I like the subtle sort of variation. So I think that's part of what spoke to me about Leading Men. It's like, it's not just a solid red. There's like a little range of things happening in there where you can see the top. This Lang is just, it's fine. It's good. It would be a perfectly fine dress, but I love a tonal yarn. So that's my yarn choice. Someone asked, so who's using Barocco? We have
Allie.
Barocco.
Hey, Sally.
Awesome. Do you
Yeah.
have it? Do you have your yarn? Beautiful, beautiful red. Ooh, I'm so excited.
I'm actually using,
Yes, Susan, you're using Barocco too?
I'm actually using a cotton.
Nice.
You are.
Which cotton?
I'm using a Serdar baby cotton
Lovely. Oh, look at that. Oh, I'm so
because I wanted her to be able to wash it and dry it without thinking about it.
smart.
You're
So-
You're a good grandma. Because that is a huge thing. So somebody
Yes,
here
and this is
mentioned,
obviously for my,
I'm sorry, go ahead, Susan.
no, it's for my granddaughter. I have 3 grandsons and 1 granddaughter, so I'm thrilled to have a granddaughter. Because the grandsons really don't care if you knit for them. But the mother of the daughter is thrilled. So
Well, we teach a bunch of kids to knit, which is like my therapy. It's the greatest thing in the world. And we have a little boy that we teach who's in 4th grade, and every day he comes wearing a sweater with his initial H on it. And he wears his bright pink hat. It's the color of the pink pussy hat, you guys. So he's wearing this bright pink hat and whatever color H sweater. And I'm like, you are the most knit-worthy person in the world. Your grandma must be so happy. Like, these are like his skin. He's like, I take the hat off to wash my hair and I put the hat right back on. And then he wears these H sweaters and it's like his uniform. It's the best. Like, love this boy. So there are some boys out there, don't write them all off, Susan. Anchor Bay, I don't know that yarn. That sounds amazing.
I see someone's using Cascade 220. And I'm pretty sure it's a worsted weight. Wait, am I echoing?
It's okay. I did the gauge, so. It's light. It's not.
So your dress might come up being a little bit bigger.
Well, it's not because I did the gauge and I went down a needle size, so.
There you go. Okay, good.
And it doesn't matter because I don't have anybody to knit it for.
Your daughters are a little bit older than this size.
My daughters are not giving me granddaughters yet.
Give them time.
I don't want to give a Kanahara, so.
Awesome.
Anyway,
Well,
it's a light worsted.
we have a button. Beth has some button. Do you have the buttons, Beth? A show and tell moment?
I don't think so. I buy a lot of those buttons. I have to go dig and look, but I can't now. But I texted Felicia at Pick Up Every Stitch in Mount Kisco this morning and said, though I already ordered those beautiful buttons online, those are gorgeous, those enamel buttons, but it didn't occur to me. Someone said they weren't machine washable.
Yeah.
So I texted Felicia and she said the Big Bad Wool ones, they're really cute little flowers. I don't think I have them, but I can get them. And just call the shop and tell her. And I said, do you have a bunch? Because people wanted, and she'll ship them to you. So if you need machine washable cute ones.
If you don't mind, Beth, to throw it, are you in the Facebook group?
Yeah.
Yeah, if you don't mind to throw it in the Facebook group,
Okay,
just
absolutely.
as a point of reference, that would be great.
Yeah, I will. Because I don't think I have the flowers, though. I'll go look. I might have them.
Well, maybe Felicia can text you a picture.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's good to know about other.
I was actually hoping to find butterflies.
Oh, that would
I
be
wanted
so
to find
sweet.
butterfly buttons because of the butterflies on the front of the dress. So that's my goal, is to find butterfly buttons. So if anybody sees them, please let me
I'll
know.
ask
Put it on
her.
Facebook.
I'll ask her and I'll have
They have to be machine washable.
I put knit trinkles on baby stuff. They're
Trinkles?
trinkles.
Yeah.
Yeah, they definitely have flowers, but I usually get the hearts for the baby and then you sew it in whatever color you want.
I just never put anything in like any hand knit. I'm too freaked out because we had a blanket that got destroyed. So my kids felted multiple winter hats. I'm too afraid.
Yep. I got the daisy buttons as well and just found out today on Instagram that she lives in the neighboring town of.
Yeah, Huntington, right?
She lives in Centerport, but yeah, because she had posted that sweater, the black and white February challenge thing. And she said where she got her yarn. And I'm like, that's my local yarn shop. She's like, we must live close. It's like, oh, I could have picked up my buttons. But
Wadler is awesome.
Yeah.
Awesome stuff. All right. Well, anybody else, any questions? You guys want to hang out and knit? We can do that. But we're here.
What's the loose goal? What do we do? What are we doing next week? I just want to know where to go to.
Next week, I'm going to show you fully fashioning decreases, on the armhole and the sleeve cap. Oh, actually, next week is Judy Kolb, right?
No, we have both. So we have the knitting is next Tuesday night, and then Wednesday so this time next week, because we flip so that we can get the most people possible. We have Judy Fleischer Kolb. So at this time next week will be Judy, but the Tuesday night will be sort of going from here up.
Mm-hmm. And I'll also demonstrate the crochet trim. And for the knitters who aren't crocheters, it's a super simple crochet stitch. So
you can do it.
Yeah, you can do it.
Melissa got me to crochet. she could teach anyone. Does everybody crochet? Everybody comfortable with the crochet? Enough. Anita, you're going to be fine. It's good. It's good. And it's so pretty. It's just such a delicate finish. I love it.
Mm-hmm.
It looks much fancier than it is. Like more complicated, I should say. It looks more complicated than it is.
Also, no buttonholes then.
Correct. Yes. Yes.
Yeah, so they tuck into, let's see if I can you guys see?
We use the crochet to kind of create a loop. So you don't have to knit the button hole straight into the knitting.
Really like that.
Isn't that neat? That's why she's the FIT genius. Like she has all this in her head.
I teach at adult schools, and so many times people will ask me a question and I'll just say, practice, practice, practice. And they're not very fond of that answer. And the other answer is trial and error, and a few mistakes are the best way to learn. And those kinds of little tricks are just things you pick up along the way.
I have a question about the design. I wasn't on the call last night or the Zoom. Is there a significance to the butterflies? Because there is a Holocaust book for children called I Never Saw Another Butterfly, which is based on artwork they found at Terezin. And I just thought it was great that there were butterflies in the design. And I wondered if you were thinking about that when you were designing it, or if the original dress had that in it.
The original dress does have some hem detail, which is why I added this, but I was not aware of the butterfly story or the poem and book. And when Tanya saw it and she said, I said, I'm calling these butterflies, it immediately came to her. So maybe it was divinely inspired. I don't know.
Oh, that's great.
It was really weird. It was like, wait, there's like this meaning packed in that was sort of like, it's just weird. But it's a good weird. But yeah, and we did share that poem last night. So for folks unfamiliar with it, you can Google I Never Saw Another Butterfly, or it's in it's the first slide of the Zoom from last night. It's one of those like happy accidents to sort of realize we were connecting to that and honoring those children who didn't have the experience that Judy Fleischer Kolb had. It's pretty awesome.
It just means this has more karma, great karma than you thought when you started it.
I can't even express to you how much karma this dress has. It's like every day there's something that comes out about this little red dress. It's and just even you'll see next week with Judy Fleischer Kolb, her grandmother Martha, when they came to the US, they came to San Francisco from Shanghai, and the family got jobs at Levi Strauss. And I used to live in San Francisco, and like I have such respect for Levi Strauss as an American apparel brand, iconic American brand created by immigrants to this country who happen to be German Jews. So it was a couple of generations earlier, these German Jews come to America, create Levi Strauss, and then this new generation come from Shanghai, work for Levi Strauss. And I got in touch with the historian from Levi Strauss through a friend of mine to say, first of all, Levi Strauss has a historian, which how cool is that, right? A company, full-time historian on staff. That's how seriously they take their heritage as a brand and their meaning in America and American apparel. And the historian said, we would definitely like to talk to Judy Fleischer-Kolb about her story. And here's the gift that keeps on giving. I go to Judy and I say, would you be okay speaking to the story? And she said, just give me a day or two to find my photos of Grandma Martha and my mom on the Levi factory floor. I was like, what? She had the photos. So then the next day, Judy sends me these photos and she's like, so that's Martha. And there's all these workers and Martha's right in the front. And she's like, the woman in the black and white dress is Grandma Martha. It was like, who has this? Like, who had these treasures? And somehow, like, she knew to keep these things. She knew they were important. And in the same way that she had these things to give to the museum, she had these Levi Strauss photos. It's like incredible that she's such a historian, and there's all these fun connections. So
Well,
like
that we have a survivor. Oh, he's passed away, but we have a survivor who actually was a very active speaker who actually was also in Shanghai. Now, I think he was older. Judy was a child, right?
she was born there. Yeah, she was born there.
He was in his early 20s, but I believe that I need to double check. I think he also worked at Levi Strauss. I need to check on that.
Well, and the other thing is Judy's father, Leopold Fleischer, was a cantor. So he taught all these kids. He was like the Hebrew school teacher. Like he did bar and bat mitzvahs in the Shanghai ghetto. It just keeps going. It's like their family weren't just like, like sort of hanging on by a thread. They were creating life. They were perpetuating tradition. They were giving people, they were like really incredible. So cool. And that's what her dad did when they came to the US. He continued to work as a cantor, leading people in song and prayer. So just like such an amazing, you'll see when you speak to her, she is such a treat. And you can just feel when you talk to her that she came from an incredible, I don't know, I just get such a good feeling when I talk to her. And I hope she'll show us, she has this unbelievable dress that she saved that her grandmother knit for her. That's like, in my lifetime, I should knit something as gorgeous. It's like, oh my God. It's like, looks like a Chanel, like 2-piece, like a jacket. It's just, it's so elegant, has pearls on it. It's quite stunning.
Tanya, I also, just like Wendy just spoke about, had a member of my family by marriage that had been in Shanghai during the war. So it is very meaningful to me. That's why I was so attracted to this project, because I grew up with this man. I knew where he was, but I didn't know really the history. And I come from a family of survivors. My grandparents were both survivors. So it just was really, really meaningful to me as well. And his widow, who I almost consider like an honorary grandmother, still with us. She was in Cuba during the war, but it's just a great project. I just love projects like this.
You're giving me chills. I have goosebumps, Lori. I really do. And thank you for sharing that. It's amazing. And I think just us being here gives survivors, like when they hear about it, it gives them so much hope. It makes them feel like heard, and that we're respecting what, it's amazing.
Yeah.
Someone asked last night, like, oh, it was Beth. Where's Beth? There she is. Where are we going with this? Like, what's going to happen next? And I said, I really don't know. And I feel like, there was a period of time where I really struggled with doing this work. After I went to Montreal, I spent 2 days in Montreal with an Auschwitz survivor, and it really she is so sad. She is so profoundly depressed. It was very hard for me. And on the heels of that, Melissa and I drove to Maryland to see the collection of the US Holocaust Museum's stuff. And they showed us shoes from Majdanek, which is one camp the Nazis didn't totally destroy before on their way out. And so we know a lot from the Majdanek stuff. So just seeing the shoes, the smell of the shoes, the whole thing, it just like knocked me out. And I was like, I don't know if I can continue to do this work. Like I had to sort of figure something else out. And oddly enough, it was like the pandemic disrupting all these neighborhood kids, like who wanted something to do and wanted to learn to knit. And that really pulled me out of like, it was like the perfect counterbalance to this Holocaust research, which is how can any feeling human being read this stuff and do this work and not feel there's a weight to it. It's very hard, even in cases like Judy's that are so happy. I mean, her story is she was so loved. She had her family intact. She's one of the lucky ones. But even with that, it's tough. It's tough.
No, there's always a shadow. I've been on our Holocaust Commission here for 25 years.
Where is here?
Norfolk.
Okay.
It's Virginia Beach, Norfolk. It's southeastern Virginia. I think I texted or emailed you about what I did, or I emailed it somewhere on some link, but I know you were just getting this started and probably it was like a fire hose coming at you. But,
sorry if I missed it.
No, it's okay. No, my two passions are the Holocaust and knitting. So it was like a perfect storm. But I want to do something. I don't know. I've been thinking about how wonderful this is and sharing it with people, but I wonder if there's something we could do, other garments. I don't know. I don't know. I've been thinking, so I probably have to keep thinking about how that might work itself out.
Let's stay in touch. I mean, we're in touch, and let's
Yes.
stay in touch. And I think that's so back to to Beth's question about where it's going. What I learned in doing this work is that it has to take the time that it takes, because you can't rush this. Like, it's too hard. It's too hard to be like, you know what? I'm just gonna like research every day, all day. It's like, you can't. And that was the question we had when we met the curatorial team and the conservators at the museum. We were like, how can you spend 5 days a week all year in this stuff? Like because we really felt like these objects were sort of like vibrating with history. Like we felt like, right, Melissa, like we didn't expect it. And it was like, we saw them on the table and I felt like almost flooded with all this feeling and thoughts, and just you think about where it was made and who made it, and your brain just goes places. And so you can't, we can't rush it. We don't know yet what's going to happen, what we're going to do next. But we have we know about a lot of objects, and there's I know a museum educator from the museum in Richmond, Virginia, Rena Berlin, and there was a man, and I'm forgetting his name right now, but it's a wonderful story of his mom's sweater. Do you know the story I'm going to tell?
I don't know the story, but we have a great relationship with them because we're only about 2 hours away. And if that started to blossom, we could certainly I could help you get that going. And it'd be my honor to be a part of that, because I was thinking of trying to think of some objects that we might have from some of our survivors, and I couldn't. We have a suitcase project similar to what Illinois does, called What We Carry. What we have in our, they're all duplicates. But I think there's a sweater in there, but I don't know if it's something that we just sort of threw in there to pad it out, or if it was an actual item that belonged to the particular story. But
I'm sure there are more objects like on somebody's high shelf in their closet or somewhere. I just know it. There just have to be. But as the survivors leave the earth, they're really up there in age, many of them. It's like you just don't want those objects to be lost.
No.
Look how much you get from knowing about them.
Or the stories themselves.
Oh, go ahead.
Or the stories themselves. And I will say, I was about to roll off of the commission a couple of years ago. And when the rise in anti-Semitism started, I thought I can't leave. So now I am even more committed to this. So even as hard, I want to just tell you, as hard as it is to do this, is the most important work you could be doing, or anybody touching this could be doing right now. It is the worst it's been in 80, 70 years. It's certainly terrible in this country. And the more, this is such a wonderful way for people to make a connection to this history, because past is present right now. And I can't tell you how wonderful this is for that very reason. So I don't know. My mind is racing. I usually come up with too many ideas, but
Never.
I
You
think
save them and you'll revisit them, but they're never.
no, and I think that this has great potential for for kids learning through this, and it just is fantastic.
Wendy, would your boxes be interested in any little red dresses?
What?
Would your educational boxes be interested in acquiring any of these little red
I
dresses?
don't know. They're all very tied. We have film that goes with each suitcase and that kind of thing. But we also have a relationship with it's based in, actually it's the public television station based in Norfolk, but there is something called eMedia Virginia, which is funded by the state, and it reaches 97% of the state's school districts.
Wow.
And we actually digitized, did digital forms and lesson plans for each one of our suitcases. We have 7, and got them. Actually, I was pushing for that before I even knew we would have a pandemic. And then eMedia became an incredible resource for the whole state, because everybody was, at home and doing everything remotely. So of course my head has been spinning about how to kind of do this. But yeah, I think I'm going to think of something. I haven't thought of it yet. Right now, while I'm thinking about this, I'm in the process of overseeing we had a book of 67 stories we put together about 20 years ago, and it was liberators and survivors, and so we're redoing it now because so many of them have passed away, and we're now on sort of a treasure hunt for all to fill in some of the pieces of some of this, and the stories were kind of all over the place. We just kind of got them together to get them down. And now we're refining it, since so many of these people have passed away, and we're sort of chasing down all kinds of different leads. It's kind of a treasure hunt.
It is 100%. Yeah, it so is. That's awesome. So I will share. I will share a better version of the story. This is from my memory, and I have so many stories in my head, so it might not be the perfect rendition. But the object I know of in Virginia and Richmond, I believe the man has it in his private home. Like he made a shrine dedicated to his mom, who was a master knitter. And as I mentioned in the Shanghai discussion last night, when people fled, they could not take valuables. They could not, the amount of money they could leave with, if they even could leave with money, in the case of the Shanghai Jews who were able to take some money, was so restricted. And of course, the money was confiscated and their valuables were confiscated. So his mom, according to his testimony, wrapped gold coins in buttons. So she wrapped the buttons, made a cardigan, and she was wearing their wealth the whole time. And I think they hid in I want to say they hid in a ditch somewhere in the woods. And that's a thing you read about a lot, is people who literally lived in a hole in the ground. And the sweater survived, and she always had those buttons as their security. They knew they had something. So he had some knitter make a replica of this sweater. And I asked Rena, who I know who works in Richmond, about do you think we could talk? He's this sweater is he's built he's got a mannequin in his house, and he's got this replica sweater. It's quite something. But so I don't, the sweater hasn't survived, but there's a replica of sort of it. But I just
My
love
grandfather hid in the woods. That's how he survived. So, and I think he did have some stuff that vaguely remember him talking about like hot, and he ended up being a tailor when he came to the US. So I vaguely remember him talking about like, having some money, or I think my aunts and uncles talked about it, like sewed in garments. So it's very,
Which was a
really
huge
fascinating.
risk, like a huge risk. If you got caught right doing that, that was certain death. But just, I mean, these knitters, I love,
My grandfather was he
when
was in
people
Poland, so
underestimate a knitter.
yeah,
Yeah.
But it was different because in Poland, it was like 1939 happened, and it was like day and night. And so he hid in the woods. He jumped off the trains like twice. And he was just like, my grandfather was amazing. He lived till he was 95, but he never wanted to talk about any of this stuff. And his story was sort of codified in a book that just came out by an author.
What was the book?
It's called, oh gosh, I have it right here. It was about Etta Robel, who I'm blanking on the name.
Will you
My-
post it? Will you post it in the Facebook
Yeah.
group? Are you in the group?
I will.
Yeah.
I will post it.
Yeah.
Because it's all about partisans. It's all about people that
Amazing.
that were in the camps that survived outside. And it's a story that a lot of people also, just like the Shanghai story, don't necessarily know about or haven't known about as much. It's interesting how all these stories, like, because the times were, like you say, is running, the clock's running, and I also believe that the history is such a important part of, things are just repeating themselves and of late, and it's just been so in some ways very upsetting, because you think like we learned these things, but it's not done yet. It's not, the lessons aren't learned yet, and so there is a lot of work to do.
I think what's great about this moment and having all of us, many things are great about this moment and having all of you here is like, what after January 6th, it was like, I got like a shot in the arm, not a vaccine, but of like more motivation to tell these stories, because it was such a like, seeing what we saw at the Capitol was so terrifying. And I had been like so afraid, even just Melissa can tell you for weeks about like, oh my God, we're going to publish the story and people are going to show up at my house or start hating on me online. I really would have been afraid. And that might happen. I mean, I don't know, but I said, it's like, I have to do it anyway, because if we all become afraid and paralyzed, like nothing's going to change. So us leaning into this and taking it on and doing bright red dresses is such a good counterbalance and hopefully corrective force in the universe. Like we're putting good things out into the world and celebrating people who overcame. And we're going to get through this. It's going to, we're coming through the PTSD of the last 4 years of, we got a lot of healing to do, and it's taking its time, but.
You mentioned something about the smell of the shoes way back there. And I thought that was just something that was me. I visited Dachau a long time ago, and the smell is still there. There's nothing really there except maybe the showers. I don't remember. It was really something, but I remember the smell. And I started crying. My daughter said, I think we better go. And I said, no, I think we better stay. And we just stayed and stayed. But I thought that was just me, and it's not. It's really there.
It's like a strange sensory, again, it's like you don't really know what you expect sometimes until you're in it. And the curator said, oh, we have these Maidonic shoes. Like she was so excited. Like, do you want to see the Maidonic shoes? And I was like, yeah, like we're here, let's see them. And it was just like right away, like, you know, the smell, and who knows if it's like the clean, I don't know what creates that smell, but it was overwhelming. And that on the heels of my 2 days in Montreal were like pretty devastating experience, pretty traumatic, really.
It is.
You know, it's tough. It's tough. And thank God people do that work. Like, thank God people are historians and conservators and are able to do it. I will say, in that room with the Maidonic stuff, it's crazy what they have. They have all these objects that people turn in. There was an accordion, and it was like right out of a movie, like seeing an accordion from like the 30s and 40s from Europe. I was like, whoa, I don't know which movie I feel like I saw this in, but this is definitely like I'm in a movie set. You remember the accordion, Melissa?
I do.
Yeah. It was neat. And it's like, you know, life had smell and color and sound, like it was, you know, red dress. Like it's like, that's the danger of the black and white too, is that we can separate from that more easily because it's not in color. It's not, doesn't feel as real, but it was very real. So yeah, wild stuff. So much more to share. I know we're up on 2, and so folks have to go, but I really appreciate you spending this time knitting with us. I hope you enjoyed Melissa's wisdom, tips and tricks. There's more to come. And
I just, as some bookkeeping, sorry.
yes,
So your next Tuesday date listed on your email is February 23rd. That's still in the first 10-day block. Is that when Melissa's going to be doing the shaping and the top part? Or are you waiting till the second block?
I'll work that out. We'll look at that and we'll update everything and make sure it's clear. But there's no pressure to be on a schedule, but she'll provide, and you know, content as we go. We'll just make sure that we are clear.
Right. So February, for anybody who wants to know, February 23rd, Tuesday at 7 p.m. is the next knitting get together. And then that Wednesday is the speaker get together. Right?
Judy Fleisch, yeah, save the date.
Yes.
Judy Fleischer-Kolb, she is the best.
Right.
Love her.
One more question, sorry, bookkeeping. You posted last night's presentation, or whatever you want to call it, on Facebook, and it's on YouTube, but you had mentioned that on the Facebook page that's only available for the people registered there. And I was wondering, my mother-in-law remembers you talking about your project 2 years ago when we were at dinner. It seems so long, seems like yesterday. And is it okay if I share that YouTube with her? She doesn't use Facebook.
Yeah, I'm just not making it like open to the whole world. It's not searchable on YouTube, but if you have the link, it's called Unlisted. You can share the link with anybody and it will function. It's not like tied to any kind of weird registration or anything. It's just that it's not searchable on YouTube and open to.
Right. She very much wants to see where you've come in these past years. So yeah, I wanted to share it with her.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Anybody else? Last minute parting words? Susan?
Oh, this was great.
I just wanted to, you know, the concept of the red dress, I keep thinking of the scene, and you talked about black and white, the scene in Schindler's List, if you remember. And it calls to mind, the whole thing is black and white. And then there's this girl in the red coat, dress, whatever. And my other comment is that how personal things, it's so difficult to keep introducing young people to these ideas because they don't get it and they don't see it. But when there's an item like a toy, like a shoe, like a dress, wow, somebody actually wore that, had it, played with it. I think these are where the impacts are going to be made to the generation that won't get to know survivors. So I appreciate everything you're doing here, and I think it's an interesting topic. I'm not sure what I'm going to personally do with it, but I think something will come of it. And shout out to my friend Mary, who's already knit a green sweater from the Holocaust, and she can tell you about that maybe next time. So,
Awesome.
thank you.
Awesome.
I have to say something.
Go ahead. Yes.
The reason, this is Susan, the reason I'm doing it is that my daughter, when we lived in the DC area, my husband was active duty for over 25 years. She was fascinated by the Holocaust. And she made sure that all of her friends went to the Holocaust Museum because a lot of them lived in the area. So you don't go and do things that are in your area. But she was determined that they all go. And so it has always been something for her. And I don't know why. We're Roman Catholic. So, I mean, we're not Jewish. This is not anything out of our background. However, my other daughter, who doesn't have little girls, is a history teacher, American history teacher. And I'm going to make sure that they share the dress so that she can use the dress, because when she teaches history, she teaches stories. And this is a story she needs to teach. And I'm sure she would be happy to teach in her history classes.
I love that.
So now that you've talked about this and things I wouldn't have known necessarily if I hadn't sat and listened to all of you, and I appreciate all that you have shared, I will be sharing with my daughters as well.
I love that.
And hopefully it will go down another generation.
Susan, let us know if your daughter and her co-teachers want any more dresses, since so many people are knitting them.
I will. I doubt that will be necessary as much as whoever was talking about the suitcase project.
That was me.
I would like to get in touch with them.
It was, let's see.
Who is that?
It was Wendy. Do you want me to put my
It was
email
Wendy. Okay.
in the chat?
The reason I ask is that she might be interested in something. They actually are going back to in-person teaching in another week. She's thrilled. But again, my daughter is a storyteller for her history classes.
Oh,
And I think that, her AP kids and her advanced placement, and particularly would be very interested in this kind of a thing.
I'm putting mine in the chat, and I would love to talk to her because we do send these. We send these out of state. We send them anywhere, and she also may be able to access.
Well, she's in Northern Virginia.
Oh, perfect. Okay.
She teaches at Lake Braddock High School in Springfield.
Oh, excellent.
Which is the largest high school in Fairfax County.
Yeah, that's a
So
humongous one.
My mother-in-law used to teach in Fairfax County. Look at us, all these.
and she is the social studies administrator for that high school.
All right, so
So if she has an idea, it
Yeah.
will get spread.
Well,
I love it.
please. So I just
Okay.
put my email in the chat, and I would love to connect with her. To just, I don't know if she knows about eMedia Virginia. That's another great resource. So please pass my stuff along. That's great. I'm so excited.
I love this. All right, so on that note, I will give you
I
guys
appreciate it.
of an awesome Roman Catholic woman in honor of you, Susan. And she's actually Suzanne. Suzanne Spock was a Belgian woman who moved to France, moved to Paris. She was very well-to-do, and so well-to-do that her kids were painted by Magritte, the famous painter. And so real high society, and her husband sounds like the world's worst. He brought his mistress to live with them. And at that moment, I think she was like, I got to do something with myself because I can't, I'm sure I don't, she wanted to do something about what was happening around her, and clearly couldn't make that change in her own house, but could make a change in the world. And she was part of an operation to rescue orphans and save them from sure death. And she is responsible for saving hundreds of lives of Jewish children. And for that, she was caught and tortured and executed. But what I love about her story, and I totally understand as a knitter, is that as she awaited her execution, she whittled knitting needles, like she broke off the floorboards or the bedpost, made herself needles, and unraveled the wool blanket that was in her room, her cell. Wow. And she made her son a tie and her daughter a doll. And I'm like, I get that. I so get that, because I'm not the person doing push-ups in my jail cell. That's not gonna happen. But if I had some needles and I could do one last thing for my kids, it's hard to think in those terms, but just amazing. So I leave you with that. There really were people doing amazing things to help others and do the right thing. And we're in some way connected with them too, I feel, through this project. So thank you, Melissa, for your awesome insights, and all of you for being here. And I'm looking forward to seeing you and your dresses. And if you're Instagrammers, you can use the little red dress hashtag. And if you're on Facebook in our group, I would love to see your progress, and it will motivate other knitters. And it's awesome to hear from you. It should not be me. I'll share what I know, but we really want it to be a community and hear from you guys. So thank you all so much for coming. And I look forward to our next date on Tuesday. Happy knitting, everybody.